Okay, dude. Thanks for coming on with me.
Good to see you. I'm honored, humbled, and feel very fortunate that you asked me to do this, man. It's been a
Yeah,
journey.
yeah, for sure, man. I mean, your your let's call it journey or whatever you want to call it has been really inspiring to watch. All the things you've been able to do and see all of your growth. So, to start off, why don't you just like introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, that sort of.
Yeah. So hi, I'm John. I live in the Midwest in Indiana. Not the easiest place to try to like eat, a clean diet. This is the land of interstates, highways, truck stops, and just a ton of strip malls and fast food restaurants. I'm sure that's like most of the American landscape is like that. I've lived in some cities like Portland, Oregon, St. Augustine, Florida, Southern California, where it's not like that. But for the most part, just typical American culture. Um, Grew up with a dad that, McDonald's every day for breakfast. My mom's diet isn't great. Honestly, one of my biggest pain points in my life right now is like watching people that that raise me and people in my family still like in this cycle of like um, not ideal health. So grew up, not not having really understanding of like exercise, diet, and I think I was 32, 33. I hadn't. I don't think I'd ever been to a gym, honestly, at that point in my life. I played a little bit of sports, but then I stopped when I got like into like music and stuff in high school. Didn't realize you could be like punk rock and then also work out. Like I never like prescribed it like the Henry Rollins model. So anyway, fast forward, I'm like 32, 33. I've not been to the gym. Maybe I've worked out a little bit at this point in my life. For a while during my fitness journey, I would start and then stop and start, stop. I'd start, go too hard, get hurt. And I was on vacation with my family. It was, I think, 2020. It was definitely right after COVID. I did not work out at all, just drank a bunch of booze during quarantine. And I gave my son this old camera. I'm a filmmaker, photographer, content creator, and writer, like by trade. So I have all these cameras. I gave my son an old DSLR, and he took this photo of me. And this photo was one of those moments. It's a keystone moment. It's a an anchor point. When I saw from my son's perspective the guy that he looks up to, I was like, oh my god! I was like, I wanted to be better than my dad, and I have in a lot of ways. But I would be so sad if my son or my daughter were 33 or 34 and they had like put themselves in the position that I was in. So seeing this photo kind of just sparked this like catalyst for change. And it wasn't immediately in that moment. I had to sit with that pain for a while. Um, but since I saw like how out of shape I'd gotten, I made it like a priority to like lead by example instead of, instead of prescribing to the do as I say, not as I do model. I'm like, okay, I just need to do and not say. And then by leading by example, eventually people will be like, what have you done? Which is starting to happen now. Which is starting to happen now. People are like, what did you do? You were so fat. What did you do? Like it's awesome to get those questions. It's awesome to be a part of this.
That's awesome, man. Did you ever see yourself, like, let's say in the mirror prior to the photo that your son took and you saw? Like, what do you think the significance of the photo is versus maybe seeing yourself in the mirror or something?
I think from a spiritual aspect, life is suffering, and that's what it is for everybody. And if you can relieve suffering for someone else, that is really what gives you that like the feeling of like being touched by the hand of God. And I'm still, I still identify as an atheist, but like for metaphorical reasons or metaphorical purposes, I'll say things like God and whatnot. So life is suffering. If you can alleviate suffering for someone else, that is you being of service. So when you're looking at the mirror and you want to lose weight for yourself, I think intuitively we first think it would be selfish to like try to look an ideal way, right? It feels like a very selfish thing. Over time, you start to realize, and I've started to realize that if you want to like help other people and be of service to other people, you have to take care of yourself first. But I think that like with the picture with my family, I was able to have a goal outside of myself. I was like, I need to lead for my family. This really has nothing to do with me. This is more about me making a decision that's best for my family.
So you wanted to just be there for your family in a much better way, healthier way.
Yeah, yeah.
Growing up, it sounded like you were, kind of growing up with the normalcy that fast food is just the way of life. This is how you eat, right? How do you think that affected you going, from child to adulthood and then finally being um awoken, if you will,
Yeah.
by the
Uh, Everything that we do is based upon some kind of story. And for me, my story was fast food is a part of your diet. Um, Greasy food is a part of your diet. Junk food is a part of your diet. At the end of the day, you reward yourself with like a full bag of Doritos and like 7 Dr. Peppers. Really, that's not a reward. Not to get too gross, but my dad always would joke about having diarrhea. And my dad, like I said, McDonald's every morning, a bag of Doritos at night, multiple Dr. Peppers. I wasn't really a drinker, but he smoked a lot of pot, and I didn't find out about this like until later on. Not that big a deal, but he's getting high every night and just eating like 40 Reese's cups and stuff. So like I didn't know he was getting high, but I saw him eating like all this candy and stuff. So I was like, well, that's what you do when you grow up. So for me to like for a long time, I thought there was a balance between like having shit food and having healthy food, which is true. I mean, if you're trying to eat healthy and then you deviate a little bit, that's fine. But I kept trying to like make it normal in my life. And the way my brain works is like, if I go to McDonald's, on a Wednesday when it's normally a Friday treat, and then it becomes Friday, and it starts to just like slowly creep in. Like it's too delicious and it's too good and it's too convenient for me to like be able to like have it in moderation in my life at all. So I cut it out like for a short period of time, like a trial period, and I started to feel better. And then I kept doing these trial runs at like, okay, maybe I should like break. It seems so silly to look back on it now, but it's so profound. The first time I was like, I'm not going to do any fast food for 30 days. That was like something I had never done. And I just slowly started changing this story. It's like, okay, I'm not a person that does this anymore.
Knowing that you are a content creator, I would say a popular trend on things like YouTube is to I tried this for 30 days and this is what happened, right? Or like
Yeah.
I did this for 4 years and this is what happened. So I'm curious, I know the picture had a big play in your transformation or, shift in your mindset. How much of being a content creator do you think has played a role in helping you actually make these better decisions?
And that is a good question and one I do not want to answer honestly. I feel like in a lot of ways, posting to like YouTube like saved my life. And I know that's dramatic, but I had to do it. So I'm just now starting to get traction. And for 2 years, I was putting up videos that would get 30 views, 40 views, and no comments.
Mhm.
Maybe someone like would feel bad for me and comment. But one, I was bad on camera, and two, I was so fat. And I wasn't like morbidly obese, but like I could see myself and I'd think, man, you could do better. So having to see myself over and over again. But then I have this deep desire. I talk about like being touched by the hand of God. Like I like being entertaining, but the older I get and having a family and doing some of the work I've done with like some of the documentaries I've worked on, and just like my natural default is to be of service and to like explore these stories about humanity and to like however cliche, like I want to leave the world in a better place than how I found it. So the more I dug and the more I tried to get better at content creation and writing and sharing, I got to this place where I was like, okay, you have to be honest. I was like, you're trying to be a content creator instead of being someone that is going to use creating content to help people. So a big part of like the fitness journey and eating better and taking care of myself, I definitely like was propelled, if not entirely, by content creation.
Mm.
However
Yeah,
silly that sounds.
that doesn't sound silly at all, man. Everyone has, the present place that they're in, and whether you are going backwards or you are going forwards, there is always a catalyst for the change.
Yeah.
And there can always be multiple catalysts for change, right? Like a really common one that people change for is like, oh, I just had a baby. Like oh God, like that's a scary
Yeah.
thing. I need to get my shit together, right? Or
Yeah.
like you, where it's like I see my family and I see myself, and it's like somehow there's just like this light bulb that goes off. Like, oh man, I
Yeah.
need to do
Yeah.
something here.
Yeah.
Or in your case, also content creation, wanting to inspire people, wanting to share your journey. Um, and there's no, hopefully for you, there's no like guilt or shame around the fact that content creation was one of those things, because that's okay. That's totally okay that's a part of your story, right? And
Yeah.
so I think actually you should lean into that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So we had family, we have content creation, we have seeing yourself, basically self-awareness, right? Which is a huge thing.
Mhm.
Self-awareness is, if we don't have that, how can we change, right? I guess what advice would you have for somebody trying to navigate in a world where we maybe grew up with McDonald's, let's say, you know, and this was a normal way of eating? What advice would you have for someone maybe through your own experience of how to shift your mindsets or make a decision to eat better, really?
I think when, and I think about this a lot too, about where I stand and like the better I get, how I might seem like I'm on a pedestal. And I was like looking up at the pedestal before, and there's still people above me. I still struggle with this. But when you're in a place where your diet's shit and you feel like crap and you feel terrible all the time, and you search, how do I change my life? How do I eat better? The people that you're going to look at are light years ahead of you. They're so far down the road. So the gap between where you're at, awful diet, tired, diarrhea, man, person, me, fat dad, to like six pack, winning triathlons, winning Ironmans, winning CrossFit, doing insane parkour. There's so many steps involved. So if you're in this place where you're searching and you're desperately looking for answers, just start doing a thing. If you have McDonald's 3 times a day, have it twice a day. Any progress is good progress. The journey to like radically changing everything in your life takes a lot less work than most people realize. It just takes consistent effort and consistent steps, and they can be baby steps as long as you're always, you can't, if you multiply a million times zero, it's still zero, right? But if you multiply a million by one, right? So it's as long as your bare minimum is more than zero, and then celebrate those wins. Like seriously, like if you've eaten McDonald's 3 times a day every day for your life, and then you don't do it for dinner, like you do it twice a day for like a week, at the end of that week be like, fuck yes, I did better, because you did, right? You're not like winning you're not winning Iron Man, right, at the end of that week, but you are winning. For you are getting the points, you are like upgrading your character in the video game of life.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's the 1% thing. Even like below 1%, the better than zero.
Yeah.
That's such an important thing for people to understand. And it's something that Taylor, Jake, and myself talk to our clients with all the time. It's like just a little bit. You don't have to go cold turkey. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
actually a concept in my school that we call the rainbow bridge. And
Hmm.
it's, basically just small steps to get where you want to go eventually, which actually
Yeah.
always changes too, right? Like we get somewhere and we're like, oh, I could go a little bit further actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Or completely different, man. Like,
yeah, or different.
yeah. Like, not to get too sidetracked, but like I'm doing work with my career right now where I talked to a client about getting arrested when I was like 20, and I got arrested like multiple times. And I've always hidden that, but it came up with this like philanthropic work I was doing. I was talking to like people that like grew up with like trauma and like grew up in the hood. And I was like, I've been here. And sharing, just like sharing that part of me and like being confident in who I am came from like honestly my work with you guys, from taking baby steps, and then just opening myself up to the possibility of a new world and like being okay with just being on the journey. And like I didn't know for sure that I was gonna I couldn't have imagined that I was gonna end up doing the work that I do now, but like I had to start. So it's like with your fitness journey, like you won't even be able to like picture what's possible. Like if you can't I couldn't run around the block when I started trying to like work out. And then I ran an ultra marathon last summer. It's like I never would have maybe I would have imagined, but Jesus Christ, it's so insane. But you have to start, and it has to be small. If you go too big, you'll burn out, stop, and get hurt.
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's
Yeah,
honestly amazing that you know, from where you started to, like you said, you ran an ultra marathon. Like that's
yeah,
incredible. And so how did that feel running an ultra marathon, knowing from where you started?
dude, I cry all the time now. uh, I just I don't know. What I didn't try so long at life, and now that I'm trying, it's overwhelming at times.
Mm,
You know, the suck is still there, suffering is still there, but I'm actually trying. I'm finding myself, achieving some of the goals that I set out. I'm also finding myself, like I said, with work, like in places that like I never would have imagined. I didn't. If I fantasized about it, it seemed real, but it always just seemed like a fantasy. And it all started, man, from that run around the block. It all started from the time I reached out to you guys. It's like these tiny things. The one time I was like, I'm not going to drink alcohol for 30 days. The first time I did that before I ever even filmed it, And it's all these small things. The picture that my son took.
I know one thing you're doing now, I think you're doing now is eliminating sugar.
Yeah, right now I'm doing another content creator thing. I started out as only eating real food for 30 days,
Mm,
nothing processed. Um, but it's turned into more like no oil and no added sugar
mm,
and eating minimally processed food. I feel like I'm like 2 weeks in. Even where I'm like, okay, so even like where I'm at now, I feel like I'm like the fittest I've been since high school. This first few days of changing my diet and eliminating sugar, I was such an asshole to be around. Like I knew that would happen too, but it was still so insane to like cut myself off from like potato chips and
mm.
ice cream.
Yeah, totally. There's always going to be that little transition period you got to get through.
Yeah, yeah. So right now, no oils and um, only minimally processed food. So like whole grain pasta, I've had. It'll be twice in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I've had like tofu some. It's minimally processed.
Mm. Let's just use alcohol as an example because I that's something that you've experienced, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you go from point zero, like stuck in the weeds, constantly drinking however much someone drinks, to making that decision? Like, was the picture that your son took a big catalyst for the alcohol as well, or what was the situation there?
Um, well, I knew the alcohol was inflaming my body and making me fat. And I was to a point with alcohol where I was like drinking on the weekends, and sometimes I would drink a little bit on the weekends, and other times I would drink like 4 to like 8 beers on a Friday or Saturday night. I kept having these sober curious experiments where, like starting small, I'd be like, well, I'm just not going to drink for 30 days. And then I'd go through that. And every time I did that, I felt better. So it was just a matter of like continually working at it and then figuring out some way to prioritize my health. And I think running was so I'm on like this daily running streak. I've run for at least 1 mile outside every day for like 609 or 610 days. So with alcohol is amazing, right? Alcohol is so wonderful, it does exactly what you want it to. You need something that's also amazing to replace it. And I didn't have that for a while. And I started working on my career, I started working on my fitness, and I just kind of like I knew that running would get better if I stopped drinking. So I started diving more into running, and then I did these sober experiments, and every time running would get better. I didn't have like plantar fasciitis seemed to go away. All of the things that were problems in my life or problems like with my physicality because of inflammation, because of the bad diet and the alcohol consumption. They all went away, and these windows are doing these experiments. And I was
Mm.
like, why would I not want to live that way? And that's just like, I guess the point, and to answer your question, is like you have to figure out some way, because we're all logical beings. Well, we all reason and discern, and like we look for patterns. You have to figure out some way to make alcohol not worth it, or make sugar not worth it, whatever. You have to like just keep tweaking and trying. And if you fail, get back up.
Yeah, totally. That's such an important part. Get back up if you
Yeah.
fail.
Yeah.
You only truly fail if you never get back up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Curiosity, it sounds like was a big thing for you. Like, oh, what happens if I just try this? And then you
Mhm.
found out. Like, oh,
Yeah.
this is actually pretty cool. I'll go into a little side tangent too. With something we work on with clients is when somebody comes to us, one of the first things that we do is figure out what is the goal, right? What is the dream? A lot of the times we find that the dreams are, or the goal is like pretty superficial. There's no emotion behind it. It's just like, well, I want to quit drinking because I heard it's because I think it's healthier. You know, like,
Um,
okay, well, what else? Why do you think it's healthier? Like,
mhm.
so we find a goal, essentially, is what I'm saying. A goal that actually elicits feeling, right? And
Mhm.
emotion. And so we have the goal, right? Now it's like, okay, let's build a foundation. So what does a foundation consist of is the values that you live by. So I go by
Mhm.
four doctors. So there's Dr., which is made by Hippocrates and Paul Chek. So there's Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, Dr. Happy, and Dr. Movement. We need to create values around all of these things as a foundation for the goal, right? And so that's how we go about doing that. And then, of course, the Rainbow Bridge and making the 1% steps and etc. But where do you think you started? It sounds like you just like saw yourself really, but what do you think the ultimate inspiration and motivation was for you?
It was wanting to be just like a good dad, and also like wanting to be a good partner. Alexis, my fiance, I just felt like she deserved better. You know what? We When we went on that vacation with that photo, uh, we were at the beach. We're at a lake at an Airbnb, and then we went to a beach Airbnb for like a night. And at the second place, the kids were watching this television show called Big Mouth,
Mm,
and it's so awful. At first, I was like, "You guys should not be watching this." They're like talking about like sex and puberty, and I was like, "It's fine, probably for 12-year-olds to listen to this, I guess." And I was watching it with them. And there was this episode where this adult female character who was married to a guy that was like fat and bald and had like grease stains on his shirt. She was reading this book about Esteban, this like sexy, like comes into like knight in shining armor. And then she like snaps out of the fantasy because she sees her like fat farty husband who like kept eating oysters but had an oyster allergy, and he's like, it's the oysters. And I looked at Alexis and I was like, I'm the oyster man. And she's like, no, you're not. And I was like, you're being nice. And I was like, either she's gonna have a terrible life with me, the oyster man, or she's gonna cheat on me and go and have sex with someone else. And I totally would not get mad. I would totally understand why she did that at this point. So it's just like, getting outside of myself again. It's like, what do I want to give? Like, what do I want to bring to the table? And that's like an accountable thing, right? So I had to like make myself better to be better for my family. But it was just removing myself. Like I was like, I like dealt with the depression and all these things. And every time I've been able to get out of it, it's always been the moment where I was like, okay, well, you might be depressed, but what can you do for someone else? You might be fat and not feel motivated to work out, but it's like, how will that benefit people around you? If you don't have someone around you, or it doesn't seem like it in your general vicinity, there are people. Like, I could not have a family right now, but I could just be a content creator and feel inspired to change my life, because I know that if I solve that problem for me, like any problem you solve, someone else has it. So once you figure out how to solve it, that is a value that you can bring to the community. to enhance the community. That's what businesses do, you know? They don't solve all the problems, they solve a problem that someone has. So like getting outside of myself, man, that was like the biggest motivator. I don't
that's
know if that makes sense. I don't know if I answered your question. I started getting like,
yeah, we talked about the oyster man and no.
yeah, yeah.
No, that I think that makes sense to me. You know, if other people who are watching this later on, if they have questions, they can comment, and you're in the group, so maybe you could just chime in if they.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
also you've got a plethora of YouTube videos explaining a lot of these things.
And we have a video on my YouTube channel right now about quitting sugar for 30 days. And then I have one where I worked with you guys for 30 days. And man, that is hard to leave on my channel because I'm like, I just see myself then. I'm like, oh.
Okay, so I'm not looking for a testimonial right now, but how much of an impact do you think that, okay, for context, we worked with myself, Taylor, and Jake, all the coaches here at the Holistic Ape, worked with John. It was for 30 days. And I think we each
Mhm.
met with you every week. Is that right? If I remember right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think you and I missed one, or maybe, yeah, I think we missed one because the ceiling in my office collapsed in the middle of all that.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was doing yoga with you, and
Mhm.
Jake, I think you guys were technically doing like breath work and mindset.
He just ended up listening to me talk for an hour, which is like what I think Taylor did too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of what you and Taylor were doing too, right?
Yeah.
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 Okay. So, how much of an impact do you think that had on you? Because I want to say this first before you answer. I see this a lot on in people's lives. We'll just say that in person and online. They try to DIY everything, right?
Yeah.
And we all know if you want something done really well, like to build your deck, you hire someone to build your deck who has done it a lot, right? Or like you were
Yeah.
saying, you look up somebody who's far ahead of you, who's been through the process, right? Or that
Mhm.
just knows what they're doing. So, actually, for example, I just had one of my friends message me on Instagram, and he forgot that we had this same conversation that he messaged me about acid reflux. And he was like, "Hey man, so you had acid reflux before?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Dude, we actually had this same conversation just about a year ago." And he's like
Mhm.
still having these problems. I'm like, "Dude, like you need some help. Like you need to go get some help."
Yeah.
So with all that being said, how much do you think the time with us together had an impact on everything else?
I mean, it's one of the things I look back at on as like a landmark moment, man.
Yeah.
You know, part of me, like the insecure part of me, is like I felt bad for just like dumping everything on you guys, and in some ways, I was like, man, I was it felt like therapy or life coaching, but to like it felt so healing too to like have someone listen and then just even to show me a few things. Like I still think about you teaching me posture constantly. I still use a lot of what Jake said to me, these like Yoda kind of moments, like be the warrior in the garden, warrior in the garden instead of the gardener at war. And like I talk about the sweaters of shame with people. And then Taylor listening, just like giving me permission to like pursue a different like life. It would have been awesome to stay with you guys longer. And I've thought about revisiting that, but you need someone, I think, to kind of like hold you accountable. Or yeah, yeah, that's exactly what you guys do. You also, I mean, just show people the fundamentals, like the basics. You're like, hey, have you thought about this? A lot of times people don't know.
Yeah.
Like you said, hire the deck builder to build your deck.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I swear the most common thing is like, are you even drinking water? You know?
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
yeah, those foundations are so important.
You probably hear this a lot with coaching. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So like even Serena and Venus Williams, they have a coach. Tom Brady has a coach. Business coaches hire other business coaches. Like it's a common thing in business. So like once you start scaling, there you hire people to tell you how to like get to the next place to save yourself time. You can
Yeah.
try to figure out you can try to figure out all the health stuff on your own, but I mean there's a lot of fucking fat doctors who
Yeah.
are in the pockets of like big pharma, and even the most well-intended ones, like information's hard to come by. So definitely go to a doctor, but also like take action and like, put your health in your own hands and then reach out to someone and ask someone. You guys are all like fit, happy people, and I see you guys doing like lake dips and stuff. You're the perfect person to be like, hey, I want to be like you guys. Like it would take someone years to figure out what you guys have done, but with some coaching with you guys, you could probably start teaching some. I mean, you guys started teaching me stuff right away.
Got to work together for that period of time. And I want to give you a chance too, because I do think your story and what you're doing is important. And I think it could help somebody, shift their mind and possibly achieve what you have achieved and more. And
Yeah.
so I would love for you to just share maybe the best place for someone to like follow you and just how does someone find you basically?
YouTube is the first place I would prefer someone to go. My name's Jon Kuhn, Jon, space Kuhn. When you search for me, you'll see videos about not drinking and stuff, and you'll see my face. And that's where I dive into my story. And if you're interested and want to go and dive deeper or like reach out to me, like I've got links to like Instagram and everything in the YouTube bios. But I just produce my story and share it, and like I try to like make every video like have like some kind of meaning or moral or lesson in it that you can take away and apply to your life. But generally, most of the advice is like start. If you're looking and you're searching through this stuff on YouTube because you've got a problem, and a lot of the times your problem is stems from inaction.
Go check him out. Binge watch all of his stuff instead of Netflix.
Oh, no, that's silly. Watch Netflix too. I don't know.
No, watch
Thanks,
John.
man.
Okay. People can watch you, man. So it's been awesome talking with you, dude. So thanks for
Same, man.
joining me.
Likewise.
Yeah.